clock, the Texans. On the clock now, the Seattle Seahawks. The Chicago Bears are on the clock now.
I'm talking bulletproof.
It's now the Arizona Cardinals selection. They're on the clock.
With the insight to be equal.
It's now the Indianapolis Colts selection. It's the Carolina Panthers now on the clock. On the clock now, the Detroit Lions. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock. On the clock now, it's the Atlanta Falcons. On the clock now, the Houston Texans. The Jaguars are on the clock. Now on the clock, the Washington Commanders. The New York Jets are now on the clock.
Every block, every hood, every city, every ghetto. Need a black superhero. It's gonna take one of us to save us. It's gonna take love and a lot of trust me. Just to get love and know that.
It's the New England Patriots now on the clock. The Houston Texans are now on the clock. The New York Giants on the clock. It's the Dallas Cowboys now on the clock. The Chargers are up now. They're on the clock. The Chiefs are on the clock. Now we turn to the Eagles. They're on the clock. The Minnesota Vikings now on the clock. On the clock now, the Houston Texans. The Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock now. The Los Angeles Rams are up. They're on the clock. The Panthers are on the clock. The Detroit Lions now on the clock. With the next pick, the Raiders are on the clock. The Pittsburgh Steelers are now on the clock. On the clock now, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now the Seattle Seahawks are on the clock. It's the New Orleans Saints now on the clock. On the clock now, it's the Tennessee Titans. On the clock now, it's the Green Bay Packers. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock. The Carolina Panthers now on the clock. The Kansas City Chiefs now on the clock. On the clock now, the Buffalo Bills. On the clock now, the Chicago Bears. The Denver Broncos are on the clock. The Arizona Cardinals are now on the clock. The Denver Broncos are now on the clock. With the next selection, the Lions are on the clock. With the next selection, the Falcons are on the clock. Now on the clock, the Texans. The Indianapolis Colts are now on the clock. With the next selection, The New York Jets. The Miami Dolphins now on the clock. It's the Bears now on the clock.
You spent your whole life trying to blow up, but Elohim never had time
And
for
now
donuts.
on the clock,
It's
the 49ers.
Like big bitch came to join up. Yeah, I'm still independent.
It's the
Ain't sold a million
Cowboys
records
now
yet.
on
Used to
the
be
clock.
on my checklist, big diamonds don't need a necklace. Look, we built the sound like it's
On
double
the
speed
clock
Tetris.
now,
Cannot do
it's
without
the Los
God.
Angeles
We built the
Chargers.
sound you can't copy this. I never brag, it's just
On the
confidence.
clock now,
I never
the
rap for
Kansas City
confidence.
Chiefs.
I wrote this one for the indie grind. If you ain't signed on
It's the
dotted
Buffalo
line.
Bills
Kept my soul in
now on the
dollar
clock.
signs. The industry so full of troubled dice.
The Baltimore
I don't
Ravens
follow
are
trends.
on the clock
Say that
now.
with my chest. Run it up. No, I will not bend. Run it up.
And now on the clock, the Minnesota Vikings.
Say that with my chest.
And now on the clock, it's the Arizona Cardinals.
Run it up. Run it up.
The Colts
Run it up.
now
Run
on
it
the
up.
clock.
Run it up.
With the next
Run it up.
selection,
Run
the
it up.
Carolina
Run it up.
Panthers on the clock.
Run it up. Run it up.
Now
Run
on
it
the
up.
clock,
Run it
it's
up.
the Las
Run it
Vegas
up.
Raiders.
You gotta put in that work, dog. I
It's
put the
the
kingdom
Steelers
first. I
now
know that you
on the
gotta
clock.
wait for your turn sometimes to build something really sustainable. Work on your catalog so the day that you finally pop off, they'll see it's not just a once off. You put in time, the harvest is ready, it's ripe. I thank God for the payment. That's a solid foundation. When I finally make it, I'll give God
Next
all the
up,
praises.
the Cleveland Browns are
G.O.D.
on the
who
clock.
conquered evil forces. I don't trust in chariots or fortresses. Yeah, I walk by faith. I don't follow trends. Run it up. Say that with my chest. Run it up. No, I will not bend. Run it up. Game time in it. Game time. I don't follow trends. Say that with my chest.
The Jaguars are on the clock now.
Run it up. 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 Run it up.
The Washington Commanders are now on the clock.
She-Rag got me.
Next up, it's the Seahawks on the clock. The New York Jets on the clock now. With the next selection, the Saints are on the clock. The New England Patriots are now on the clock. The Atlanta Falcons are now on the clock. With the next pick, the Kansas City Chiefs are now on the clock. Bay Packers are on the clock. The New York Giants are now on the clock. With the next selection, the Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. The Dallas Cowboys are now on the clock.
I'm downstairs. You mean? Girl, I told you I'd be ready.
With the next pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. It's the Carolina Panthers now on the clock. The Chicago Bears are now on the clock. With the next selection, the Browns are on the clock. On the clock now, the Houston Texans. The Chicago Bears are on the clock now. The Cleveland Browns are now on the clock. The Panthers are on the clock. It's the Detroit Lions now on the clock. The Las Vegas Raiders now on the clock. It's the Cleveland Browns now on the clock. With the next selection, it's the Washington Commanders. Next up, the Jets are on the clock.
Took me 20 to get ready.
On the clock now, the Baltimore Ravens. It's now the San Francisco 49ers pick. They're up. Now on the clock, the Giants. On the clock now, the Dallas Cowboys. The Los Angeles Chargers now on the clock. The Chiefs are on the clock. On the clock now, the New Orleans Saints. The Minnesota Vikings are now on the clock. The New York Jets are now on the clock. On the clock now, the Detroit Lions.
Playing games, good. Bring your downstairs.
Next up, it's the Dolphins on the clock.
I think I left something in the house.
Why would I ever have to cop a chain again when the QB chain birth most of the chains in the game?
On
No
the
post
clock
office
now.
stamp of time. Took a slice out of the
The
big
Los
apple,
Angeles
made apple
Rams
pies, family
now
size.
on the clock.
Leather bombers and Nike Sacai's, dangerous corners. You better pray that
On
tomorrow
the clock
arrives.
now,
Rap, sugar, ray,
the New England Patriots.
Y'all too out of shape to even box with me. Heavyweight, I know my way around the ring.
Next up,
Just like
the
Shorty know my way
Patriots
around
are
the
on the
making hits
clock.
with Hit Boy, all he gotta do is hit record. Record breaking news, had to show up just to fill a void. Confused, spoiled little boys, y'all better keep your poise. Leave me out of the weasel. Be cool when you see me, I'm hot at all that rap.
On the clock now, it's the Denver Broncos.
Locked in on the
Next
instrumental, I
up,
took back
the
the key to this.
Cleveland Browns are on the clock.
Run me the keys, run me the bees, run me that flow back. Your top three, I'm not number
Next
one. How
up,
could you post
the
that?
Commanders are on the clock.
You cannot hold that. I'm not the one to go at. Me,
The
Joe Black.
Jaguars are on the clock. The Houston Texans are now on the clock.
I would have crowned the city is mine. You cannot hold that. I'm not the one to go
On the
at.
clock now, the Los Angeles Rams.
Already been said. Predictions, I don't listen. It's already in my head.
Now
No
on
funny.
the clock,
Your most hungry
the
place.
Rams.
I was past that at 28. Underground tapes. As my ass captain publishes
The
states.
Bengals
As we slide
now
into
on the
G-Ride.
clock.
I've been getting criticized.
The Las
It's keeping
Vegas
me
Raiders
energized.
are
Create with
on
a
the
business
clock.
mind. I'm from where killers reside. A wild hood, only knew goons since my childhood. Say anything in they raps cause it sound good. Don't even mean what they say, horrible outlook. Y'all ain't really about this house. Y'all was
On the
in the
clock
house
now,
with it. We don't
the
respect
Chicago
fake children in
Bears.
Silly outfits, window down, blowing out great tits.
The New York
Tits,
Giants
on Houston
on the
Street.
clock.
I caught the bounce before my
On the
even
clock
bounced
now,
the beat. I
the
took the hard way
Jacksonville
in.
Jaguars.
Man, it's the route for me. Run me the keys, run me the bees,
On
run
the
me that
clock
flow back.
now,
Your
the
top three, I'm
Houston
not number one. How
Texans.
could you post that? I would have crowned the city is mine. You cannot hold that.
It's
I'm
the
not the one to go
Philadelphia
back.
Eagles
Me,
now
Joe Black.
on the clock.
Run me the keys, run me the bees, run me that flow back. Your top three, I'm
It's
not
the
number one. How could
Bears
you post
now
that?
on the
I would
clock.
have crowned the city is mine. You cannot hold that. I'm not the one to go back. Meet
Next
Joe
up,
Black. Meet Joe
it's
Black.
the Packers on the clock.
Why would I
The
ever
Jaguars
have
are
a
on the
chain
clock
again?
now.
Chain birth most of chains in the game.
The Los Angeles Rams are up. They're on the clock. The Kansas City Chiefs now on the clock. With the next selection, the Browns are on the clock. Now on the clock, the Washington Commanders. On the clock now, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With the next pick, the Raiders are on the clock. With the next pick, the Miami Dolphins are on the clock. The Green Bay Packers are now on the clock. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts are on the clock. Now on the clock, the San Francisco 49ers. Up next, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock.
Yeah, let me show you how to be a star.
It's the Atlanta Falcons now on the clock.
Let me show you how to shine bright.
And now on the clock, it's the 49ers.
Let me show you how to be a star. Yeah, pull up with a baddie in a fancy